The Vermeer 605N is a fantastic baler. It is rival to the Kuhn and one of the only balers that you get with the Vermeer DLC outside of the ZR5. It only requires 100 horsepower, it only weighs 3.9 tons, and it does make bales all the way up to 180 centimeters. It's also deceptively big. You don't realize how big it is until you get it on the farm. Quite tall. It's also a little less than the Kuhn as well, at only 56,500 pounds. It really is a fantastic little baler brought to you from Vermeer, and if there's anything that Vermeer do, it is making grassland care really well. I really like this thing. I like all of the Vermeer tech, and if you're looking for an easy, small, good use of round balers, this is what you want. The Anderson BioBaler WB55 is the only BioBaler in the game to my knowledge. It is used to push poplar into bales, and it is really expensive for the job. It costs you £99,500 for this piece of kit, and I have honestly never used it. You also require a lot more horsepower than other balers at 200 HP, and it only makes 125 centimeter diameter bales as well. It seems like a very specialized piece of kit, but a piece of kit that I would avoid. I don't know anybody else that really messes with poplar that much, but it's nice to know that they have a tool for the job, I suppose. Something that I personally will never ever use, and not at that price as well. The Goweil G-1 F125 baler is a pretty simple and basic baler as it comes. Only does 125 centimeters diameter for round bales, and yet still costs you £59,500. Also has a much higher power requirement at 120 horsepower compared to the Kuhn and the Vermeer, and as well the Claas. The Claas is probably its closest competitor, as that is another one that only does 125 centimeter diameter bales, and yet this one is so much more money. I personally could not justify buying this over the Claas because the Claas is just better value all around. However, the color scheme and the brand is what you're paying for, and if you see this in the discount store, I would say it's probably worth a punt. Outside of that though, it is just a waste of money in my opinion. The Goweil G-1 F125 Combi is literally just the G1 F125 with a wrapper on the end of it. For the extra price of that wrapper, you get to pay nearly £40,000 more. I haven't seen a rip-off this bad since looking at the Vaderstad cultivators. This machine looks okay, again, just by the Claas. It only does 125 centimeter diameter bales. It requires an obscene 160 horses to be able to run this, and you're paying just shy of 100 grand for what I can only see as a name. It looks okay, but even then it's so big and bulky, and I can't really see why. I'm sure in real life this is a fantastic piece of kit and worth every penny, but game wise you're better off just buying the cheaper piece of machinery that does exactly the same job. It is such a shame because it does look quite nice. The Pottinger Impress 125F Pro is the smallest round baler available on Farming Sim with base game and DLCs, not including mods. It only requires 100 horsepower, it weighs 4.8 tons, and it only does bales of 125 centimeters in diameter. It's a handy little baler, but honestly, it kind of lets itself down with its limitations. Most other round balers can go all the way up to 180 centimeters and don't really require much more in the way of power. However, it is the cheapest round baler as well at only £48,000, and with its small hitch, it's actually quite easy to maneuver and work with as well. It doesn't weigh a huge amount, it doesn't cost a huge amount, and you get a nice, clean, simple baler for your trouble. Fantastic for smaller fields and smaller farms. It's easy to maneuver, and all in all, not a terrible buy. Not my first choice. I tend to prefer the larger bales if I am going to be using a round baler. I wouldn't go for this just because the amount of work you would have to do for anything larger than a a 5-hectare field would not be worth the effort. The Pottinger Impress 185 VC Pro is the 125's bigger, beefier, older brother. It comes with a much higher power requirement than the other round baler wrappers at 150 horsepower. However, you are able to do a bale of up to 180 centimeters in diameter and wrap up to 150. This gives you a lot more versatility on the farm and allows you to make mincemeat out of those larger fields to really get the job done, especially if you want to bale straw and other things that you can't exactly wrap. The wrapper is a bit in the way. It doesn't fold up nice and neatly when you're transporting it like it does with the Fendt and the Messay. However, the general size of it and the weight of it, it still is very maneuverable and it looks okay. Personally, I do prefer the aesthetics of the Messay and the Fendt, but for a baler that you want to get the job done, this will definitely do you well. It is also the most expensive at £99,500, but I feel that money is very well placed. The Goweil LT Master F115 is a terrifying piece of kit. It opens up like something from Transformers, costs you more than a pretty penny, and looks incredibly confusing in how it works. What's more, out of all of this nonsense, you only get 125 centimeter diameter bales out of it. That seems like a lot of money and a lot of faff that only realism lovers will really get to enjoy. It is an impressive piece of kit nonetheless, and at a whopping £240,000, it's gonna set you back a fair bit. Honestly, I would probably stick with the smaller, easier to use and very simple balers that cost you a hell of a lot less money. It's very good for realism, it looks incredible, it runs relatively well, and I still have zero idea on how it actually works. Machines like this are purely, for my expertise, something to look at but never to use. The Messay Ferguson MF RB4160V Protec is a bit of a mouthful. However, the baler itself is actually really good. It's pretty expensive in comparison to the Claas, nearly £6,000 more. However, you get a lot more machine for that money. You get the ability to make and wrap bales up to 150 centimeters in diameter. It is a little bit heavier at 6.7 tons, and yet it only has 140 horsepower requirement to use. It's a quite funky looking design as well. It's got this weird like round bit here where it holds the bale as opposed to, say, the Claas, which is more flat on the back of it, and it runs really smoothly and quite quickly as well. I really like the way this looks and the way it runs, and it definitely speeds up your time on the farm. Whilst the power requirement is less, it does weigh a little bit more because it can take the bigger bales, so you definitely want to take that in consideration when choosing a tractor to pair with this. It's a very, very good piece of kit, and if I'm looking to use a wrapper, I would probably choose this one over the Claas just because of that size differential. The Claas Rollant 455 RC Uniwrap is one of the first balers that we encounter that allows you to wrap as well as bale all at the same time. The downside to this piece of equipment is that it only wraps and bales at 125 centimeters diameter, so you are very, very, very limited in the size of bales you can make, and this can make the larger fields seem a little bit daunting. However, it is only £78,500, which is a really cracking deal for a piece of equipment that is going to save you time in the long run, especially if you're on those smaller fields. It has a requirement of 145 horses, and it will obviously go at 17 kilometers per hour when you are running. It weighs 5.8 tons, so you are going to probably need a piece of equipment with a bit of weight on the front of it. However, if you get the right mower attachment and you want to just wrap, you can balance out that weight on the front of the tractor. It is also worth noting that if you do have a mower on the front of the tractor whilst using this, you do need to combine both the horsepowers of both to get a tractor that is going to be able to pull them both effectively. A fantastic piece of kit if you're starting out and looking to venture into using a wrapper as well. The Fendt Rotana 160V Combi is basically the Messay Ferguson but with a reskin. It literally reminds me of the copy your homework but make it a little bit different meme. It has the exact same power requirement, the same exact weight requirement. It does the bales the exact same size. It looks the same. The mechanics look the same. At this point, I would struggle to be able to tell the difference between the two of them if it wasn't for the bright green color. What this means is that it is down to purely personal preference over which one you decide to buy, because you're going to get the exact same performance out of them in the game. And I want to make sure that that is 100% totally, utterly clear, that in real life they might be a little bit different. In the game, they are virtually exactly the same. The Goweil Vario Master V140 looks exactly the same as the LT Master, with the difference of the fact that you can actually go all the way up to 150 centimeters diameter. And honestly, that's not terrible, considering the price only goes up by about £19,000. I still wouldn't pay it, and I still fail to see the appeal of machines like this, other than the fact that they do indeed look like Transformers when they open up, but I can see the market for it, and it is a very, very impressive piece of kit all the same. It still only requires 120 horsepower, and it does have a maximum capacity of 20,000 litres, which is pretty damn good as well. Overall, I would still rather just go around and bale after going, but I can definitely see a use for this piece of equipment on the farm. The VB3190 is my go-to beginner baler. I will often start with this when I start my baling career on a farm before upgrading to either a square baler or the balers that also wrap as well. The price is fantastic, and the diameter goes all the way from 125 centimeters to 180 centimeters. This gives you a lot of versatility and allows you to get the bigger sizes for wrapping, which again allows you to save more time on the farm because you are making less bales essentially. It weighs only 3.7 tons, only requires 100 horsepower, and you can of course go 17 kilometers an hour whilst you are baling. Its size is phenomenal, its weight is really good, which means that you can use most, if not all, of the lighter tractors as well. It's simple but effective, and really, really cost effective and great for the economics as well. Often what I will do is I will put a small mower on the front of the tractor and then bale with this on the rear, allowing me to get grass bales really quickly for wrapping later on. It's a really, really solid buy for starting out on your own farm, and it doesn't really matter the size of the field either. The auto unload is a little bit slow, as it is with all-round balers, but that is really the only sort of negative of this piece of equipment.